Welcome to the Equine Vet Connect Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Carter. I'm a veterinarian and a farrier. The goal of this podcast is to educate horse people, break things down, bust myths, and keep it real. Speaking of breaking things down, here's my legal disclaimer to keep my attorney and insurance company happy. While I am a vet, I may not be your vet. Contact them before trying anything you hear on this podcast. Remember, just because you watched it on YouTube or heard it on a podcast does not mean you can do it. Please use common sense.
Welcome back to the Equine Vet Connect Podcast. Dan is in the Caymans, so it's Girls Week, and the girls are going to girl. So I have a special guest today. Not really a guest. She's here all the time.
She's behind the camera.
Yeah, she's usually behind the camera. I have April Grantham with us. She is our marketing manager. She was a tech for a long time, and then she transitioned into marketing manager, and now she does all of our social media and sets up all the tech things that we don't understand and helps me when word isn't making sense to me. So she does it all. And she's also here on the podcast today because she is a hauler, and that is our topic. We are going to talk about long distance hauling for horses. This has been requested a couple times by a couple different people. Just about, what are some safety concerns? What are our legal concerns with this? What are some recommendations, kind of pre and post hauling? And thought it'd be helpful to bring somebody that has some experience hauling horses.
Yeah, I know as a tech we get lots of questions about like health certificates and that kind of stuff. So we're going to try to address the most common questions that we get asked.
Mm-hmm. So, very fun. So, if for the sake of this, what we're talking about today, when we talk about long distance hauling, we're talking about kind of specifically hauling horses for, 8 to 12 plus hours, like multi-day trips, interstate type travel. We're not getting into really international travel. That's a whole nother can of worms that we're not even going to go into. But one of the things I think that we, want to say is that for long hauling horses, we need these horses to be very fit before we do this. And especially for elective travel, like for a show or for a sale purpose, in a non-emergency setting, we want these horses to be in good body condition. We want them to be able to stand on all four legs because traveling is hard on these horses.
It uses all of their muscles. It takes a lot of fitness for them to be able to withstand it, and not be sore the next day or be able to go compete. I know in livestock, we talk a lot about shipping and the effect that it has on like your beef cattle and their loss of muscle because of the stress. So we need to kind of consider that as well with horses and these performance horses, that it's going to have an effect. And if you are hauling to then go compete, you need to factor in some downtime to allow them to recuperate after the trip in order to be able to perform at their best.
Mm-hmm. So, when one of the things that we do before we have any travel is a health certificate on a horse, or a certificate of veterinary inspection, depending on what state you live in. This is pretty much mandatory if you're traveling anywhere out of state. So what this is a accredited veterinarian must do an exam on a horse about 10 days before they leave, and then at that time, we're going to assess that this horse is physically fit to travel. So are they in good body condition? Can they stand on all four legs comfortably? Are they, running a fever? Do they look like they've been exposed to any infectious diseases in the last couple weeks? So we're going to look at all that, say, yes, this horse is good to go. We issue this certificate. They're good for... Usually it's about 30 days. There are some states, Georgia's one of them, that we can issue a 6-month health certificate. And this is basically kind of like having a passport that this horse can go anywhere that they really choose. There are some, I'm not even going to get into it, but there's definitely some states that will stop you no matter what time you're coming through, what you look like, and they will chase you down. And they will get your paperwork, and if you do not have all the paperwork that you need in that moment, they will turn your butt around. And there is nothing that I can do from the phone to help you.
Yeah, you got to have all this in order, or it's kind of your fault if you get stuck at the state line and have to be sent back. Now there's a chance that they don't stop you, but is it worth the risk? Not really.
Yeah.
You do have to have your Coggins. I always require Coggins.
Yes.
In order to get your health certificate, you have to have a current Coggins, and your Coggins cannot be expiring within the time that the health certificate will be valid for. So if I'm crossing state lines, I have to have a Coggins and a health cert on any horse that I'm hauling. Just that covers me, covers the owner, covers the horse, allows for there to less likely be a hiccup on the trip, allow it to go smoothly. So definitely the health certificate. I know it seems kind of like a waste of time and money sometimes, but it is important, I think, for disease control. That's what we're trying to track and mitigate throughout the U.S. So
Right. Especially like one of the big states that's like really, really aggressive about it is Florida. If you're going into Florida, you absolutely need to have a certificate. They will chase you down on the highway.
yeah, I mean, they've got so many imports
Yes.
coming in and out too that they've got to be very, very cautious.
Yes, and so it's very much mandatory. And there's some states too that there's additional permits you have to get. The one that comes to mind is New Mexico. For some reason, there's like paperwork that you have to do.
So for horses, when you go west of the Mississippi River, a lot of those states start requiring brand inspections upon entering, in which case you have to have a current Coggins with that horse in your name. That's what they're going to look at as ownership. It doesn't matter if their AQHA papers are in your name. It has to be a Coggins or a health certificate. And then you need to review that state's protocol and make sure that you're abiding by that. That's going to prove that you own the horse. And I believe most states that require the brand inspection, you have to have that done even if you change counties within the state. Like,
really?
they're very strict about it.
Wow.
Or they can fine you the same way that like the DOT or USDA, whatever, could. So something to consider if you're going west is look into that brand inspection upon arriving.
I didn't know that. I didn't know it was that aggressive, but
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense though. I mean, again, you have like, especially like Texas, like you have a lot of horses coming in and out from
Well,
all over the
unfortunately,
world.
you would think that Texas requires it, but it's actually the exception
Really?
to the west of the Mississippi River rule. They do require it for cattle, but not for horses. So you don't have
Interesting.
to have your brand inspection in Texas,
Huh.
but
Interesting.
pretty much everything outside of that, yeah.
Wow. Okay. See, the more you know. So
Crazy.
So if you are planning on, traveling with your horse across state lines, talk to your veterinarian. We have to do special training in order to, be able to issue health certificates. And so we're going to be the most accurate on what these laws are. I mean, you can see, even I don't know all the laws right off the top of my head, but if you're saying, hey, I'm buying this horse from this state and I'm shipping them here, or we're moving, or we're going to a show or something, talk to us beforehand. We'll figure out, what you need to do. And give us plenty of time. Don't just call us like the day before you're leaving and say, I need this, because sometimes some of these things do require a good amount of paperwork for us to get through.
Especially if they're needing a Coggins, like you can't call us the day before.
Yeah.
We have to send that off. Like, we hope to get it back within 48 hours, but I mean, you never know with the
Yeah.
lab. So yeah, try to plan in advance. Let everybody involved know. Let your transporter know. Since you mentioned real quick buying horses out of state, potentially sight unseen, you're not there, I highly encourage, if your transporter doesn't do it already, to ask them to take a prior to loading the horse photo, update photos along the route if it's a very long trip, and then also get photos when that horse is delivered and steps off the trailer, and that just helps if there's any kind of legal implication later due to neglect or whatever, that you've got kind of all your bases covered.
Right. So I think that's kind of a good thing to transition into. Like we mentioned earlier, travel is really hard on these horses. And there's actually been science done that shows that horses lose weight on a trip. And, a lot of that comes from dehydration is a big one. They're not usually, drinking as much as they have been, and they're sweating a lot on these trailers. Their heart rate is usually very increased when they're on these trailer rides, so they're exerting a lot more energy. They may not be eating as much. And stress can be really hard on the body. It can really start breaking down a lot of muscle tissues. So horses will lose weight on a trip. They do tend to gain it back fairly quickly, assuming all is well when they get to their final destination, but that is something that can happen. So, like you mentioned, having a picture of the horse beforehand, because they might step off that trailer and you're like, what the heck just happened? Like, this is not the horse that, we saw a couple days ago.
Yeah. And I try to make as little changes as necessary or as possible on the trip. So if the horse is leaving a certain barn and like going to a new owner, for instance, I'm going to get the feed that previous owner had. So that way we aren't also now changing their diet or introducing a new hay on a trip when you're just asking for issues there.
Right. Because horses are creatures of habit. They like to have a routine. They like to keep things consistent. And when things veer off the norm, that's when horses like to crash and burn. So, some horses, like some of our show horses, they're very seasoned travelers. Even they can, have a hard time adjusting with some of these things. So, it's whatever we can keep the most consistent, I think, is going to be key. So like you said, keeping the hay the same, trying to keep their grain the same if they're on a certain time schedule for things. Medications are really important too. If your horse has Cushing's and is on a daily Presend, or if they're on, a daily NSAID for arthritis pain or something, that's going to be really important to know ahead of time. So if you're hauling with a shipper, make sure that they know what that horse's routine is and what medications they're on. I know a lot of these private shippers, they will do medications, they will do supplements, they will do all these things, but you have to communicate that with them ahead of time.
The only change that I ever make is I ask if that horse is still likely to eat its grain if it's soaked, just because that helps keep them hydrated. If they aren't used to that at home or they're picky about it, then I won't do that. But that does help on the trip to get some kind of water in them.
Yeah. So keeping things there. One of the questions we get a lot is wrapping the legs and shipping boots.
So my personal recommendation is if the horse is prone to stocking up, then I will, assuming that it's not extremely hot outside. But I still follow that 12 on 12 off rule, at least as much as possible. So I'm not going to like overnight a horse and leave the boots on. I'm going to turn out or put them in a stall wherever I'm overnighting and give their legs a break from all of that. And then I'll rewrap the next morning with clean boots, and we'll go from there because they're going to get sweaty. We need to reduce the risk of dermatitis and all the things. Like, just be thorough in that. One of my concerns with wrapping them, I don't just automatically do it for everybody, is it actually retains a lot of heat at the leg, and that could cause issues that wouldn't have been there otherwise.
I've seen some too where, wraps, those big shipping boots, they fall down during the course of the ride and they start pinching on structures. Some horses don't like it and they're going to start kicking and they end up hurting themselves from that.
Know your horse.
If your horse has never been wrapped before and you're going on a trip, now is not the time to wrap them.
Let's not introduce it on the trailer.
Do not do that, please.
Yeah, that's not fun for anyone. So, just know your horse. Talk to your shipper. They should be able to advise on that. But
I know some shippers too, like standing wraps. They're like, we will not put them back on. Like they'll say like, oh, we'll take them off, but like they will not put them back on just because there's so much risk with if they're put on incorrectly. Right. If something happens, they're like, oh, well, the shipper didn't put them back on, and now my horse bowed a tendon or got themselves hurt or. Yeah,
there is some liability with that. That's where taking your photos comes in handy, because then if they see that it's wrapped incorrectly, then the owner can say something. But yeah, just communicate and be upfront and know your clientele, and clients know your shipper.
Yeah, I think that's kind of if we're gonna like say anything, it's like know your shipper. Get a reputable hauler, get somebody that knows the rules, make sure they have, a proper trailer that's equipped with things. They have an emergency plan if things go wrong. You can communicate with them because, anybody can go buy a trailer and
start hauling.
So
cheaper, I cannot say this enough. This is where cheaper is not better. Like above anything else, cheaper is not better when it comes to shipping. Like you pay for what you get what you pay for. Just do not just base who your hauler is based on their price, because you will realize later was not the right choice.
Right. 'Cause there's a lot of things when horses are on trailers, it's a long day, things can happen. It's a stuffy environment. Ventilation is one of the big things that we, kind of hear about, and that's one of the big complications that comes in with horses. Horses that are traveling, they're going to be at a higher risk for getting respiratory infections just because that cortisol is taking a little toll on their immune system, and they're going to be more likely to develop things. And if we're in a very stuffy environment that's not well ventilated, if we have shavings in there that are really dusty, sometimes even the position of the horse's head, if they're tied really high up and they can't, clear mucus from their airway, that's going to predispose them to a respiratory infection.
Yeah, absolutely. Since you brought up the tying and the shaving, let's jump into all of that. Personally, I have mats on my floor. I make sure that they aren't like rolled or flipped or uneven or anything like that. That could cause issues. And then I like to use the large flake shavings for hauling. Yes, they're a pain to pick. However, most of the time I just strip them out when I'm done anyways. But that's going to be the least slippery, the most cushion for the ride. They kind of get like their air ride supports, some suspension there. So I use the large flake. I have mats. I'm very careful not to use the pellets. I've heard of people doing this, and at one point I have done it before I knew better. Those like expandable pellet shavings, I've heard of people put them in there just as pellets because, when they pee now it's going to absorb everything. However, those are really slick. I don't know if you've ever dumped a bag of those in the stall and then walked across them. Like, you're going to bust
like
it.
marbles, yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly like marbles. And even with as heavy as horses are, like, they still get unbalanced on that. So absolutely don't put them in there not soaked. But if you're going to use them, use it as your base layer. I still don't really like them because they tend to get wet and then be slippery. And like I said, I like the flakes because it adds some cushion. So that's kind of my go-to on that. So and the flakes are going to be less dusty than your looser pellet. So that helps with some of the respiratory things. As far as tying, again, I communicate with my owner or whoever knows the horse best to know, is this a horse that sets back, or do they have to turn around in order to get off the trailer? Do they need a ramp? Like, ask all the questions, or ask your shipper the questions, so that everybody is prepared and you're reducing the risk of there being an accident or injury. I like to leave horses untied and just put them in the slant. I know for like real long hauls, people that'll have the box stalls, they're going to be untied most of the time, and they've got access to them about their stall like they're at the barn. Tends to be less stressful. Make sure that they can still access whatever food or water, but also not tied so long that they could get a leg under it for some reason or get their head under the slant. But also not so high that you're going to cause pain or discomfort or
I've seen some people roll in here with their horse's head tied like all the way up, like, and they're like, oh well, they were trying to back off the trailer and we were trying to just get them there. I'm like, okay, but now they're riding around, like almost with a noose around their neck, and I'm like, okay, we're going to...
That makes a trailer ride not a good experience.
Right.
And that's always the goal, is to make it
as
easy as possible.
Because that's, like, I didn't even plan on getting all into, conditioning to a trailer and all of that. That's a whole
series in itself.
And that's a very controversial thing. So, but again, a trailer ride it can be very scary. It's an enclosed space. They're going somewhere unfamiliar, and if you're inducing pain or fear in this, a horse is probably not going to, want to go back on that trailer again. And so, you have to try to do everything to make this a more pleasant experience for them.
Absolutely. Like, even if the horse hasn't loaded in 20 years, like, I am never in a hurry when I'm loading. If y'all are trainers or equestrians of any type, you know that as soon as you put a timeline on it, your horse says, absolutely not, I'm going to make it take 3 times longer.
Oh, yeah.
So I never get in a rush. The goal is to make it a pleasant experience. I'm potentially having to pick that horse up later, so why would I make it harder for me the next time? I want them to load better the next time. So if you have a shipper show up and they're just like wham bam getting that horse on however possible, but they hadn't even tried the gentler approach or like more patient approach, that would be an initial red flag. I don't even know if I'd continue loading with them. But again, you know your horse, so you know how they need to load, or if they haven't loaded or whatever. So that's where it's really important that your shipper has horse experience, not just, oh, I've driven a semi my whole life or whatever. Like,
I bought a trailer. And
now I'm doing this side job. Like, horse experience is key in this. Like, you are carrying somebody's best friend or income and way of life on that trailer. So no horses. Don't just...
Yeah. Precious cargo.
Yes,
Very
absolutely.
precious cargo. Yeah. So how do you feel about blanketing on a trailer?
I mean,
it's a little different, like being down here, like where we're not as like extreme as like up north, but like even up north, like, you know, when we would travel with our show horses, they were clipped, so, you know, they had to have something on a trailer, but we weren't putting super heavy blankets on them.
No, I think essentially like a windbreaker is plenty for most. It's like your sheet, but the thing to consider when you're adding even like the boots or the blankets is the risk that it gets tangled, it gets caught, it ends up underneath them for some reason. We've cut blankets off of horses before because they freaked out coming off the trailer and now they're stuck and it's a whole thing. So again, know your horse. But I mean, yeah, I could totally see putting a sheet or something on them if they're clipped and it's cold and you want the ventilation, but that does add in some chill factor sometimes. So
right.
I will put coolers, like personally on my guys. If I go ride at the arena down the road and it's about this time of year and it's cooling off at night and they're sweaty, like I'm going to put a cooler on them because it's going to be cold. And then I'll pull it when I get home and then they're dry and ready to go out. But
yeah, I've seen some horses come in here and like even if it's chilly outside and they have like a light sheet on, they come in and they're drenched in sweat. I'm like, you know, horses can tolerate cold a lot better than they can tolerate heat.
Yeah.
So I'm always like, you know, err on the side of caution. Like if we need to warm them up when they get back in here, we can do that. That's easy to do. But cooling them off can be a lot harder to do. So, you know,
for sure,
be aware, be careful. Like, again, it can get hot in those trailers. I don't know if like, I mean, I'm
and
sure
if they're anxious too, and I mean, they'll get themselves worked up and they're lathered and it's 50 degrees outside.
Oh, so, yeah. I had one come in yesterday and I'm like, it wasn't even super hot, but this thing was drenched on the trailer. Like, she was drenched when she came in. I'm like, ooh, okay, girl. Like,
I'm more likely not to put anything on them, especially if they aren't clipped. Like, just let it ride and they'll thermoregulate pretty well themselves.
I mean, and now we've got, you know, if you want to like, you know, really ball out and, you know, go with the really fancy haulers, they've got like temperature controlled back there. Like all these stalls are kind of their own little micro environment. So I'm like, that's, you know,
I'm not quite that advanced. Now I am careful in the summer hauling when it's really hot. I try to haul early morning, late night, in the middle of the night if I need to. I've done middle of the night a lot, going back and forth from Texas to Georgia in May and August. And then more recently I did a trip to Savannah, Georgia, and then back here to like Covington area. And it was the middle of summer, super hot. And you can put bags of ice, like I got the 20-pound bags of ice, and I lined like the extra stalls in the trailer, not to where it's going to slide under her feet or anything like that or make it slippery. But I lined it with ice, and just the ventilation airflow coming through the windows running over that ice helps cool the entire temperature in the trailer.
Nice.
And I want to say it's like up to 10 degrees.
Wow.
So she wasn't even really sweaty when I stopped and checked her or when we got here, and that was a 4.5, 5 hour trip.
Wow.
So that's a cool little trick that if you have the setup for it, that'll help keep them cool. But yeah, there's all kinds of stuff that experience and
again, yeah, but
guys will
but experience, like you've done this before, like
you've
that's a neat little trick though. You have to remember that one.
I learned a lot of things the hard way, but now we're here, so
a
lot of it's trial and error.
But again, that's why if you are putting your horse through one of these long hauls, don't just call your friend that has a trailer. You know, make sure you're going with somebody that's done this before, has experience, has a backup plan, you know, kind of knows the tips and tricks and knows what we need to watch for.
And I really respect the owners that are like, I have a trailer, but I haven't pulled it in like 2 years. And you say their horse is coming in for like a colic surgery, like they're worked up, the horse is worked up. They just don't want to deal with it. Call somebody that's experienced. And I absolutely do not think any lesser of them at all by not using their trailer, because it's fine. Call somebody that can get it done for you and keep everybody safe.
So yeah, so that's kind of a good transition into, we've kind of been talking about, our healthy horses, like kind of our elective travel. Let's kind of get into emergency type travel. Like we have somewhere we're hauling now to a hospital or a clinic, or we're hauling somewhere because this horse is sick or hurt or something. So I think the big one, the question that I get is, if I refer a horse to a clinic for a colic, is tying their head, to tie or not to tie. And I think I always say, don't tie them, because if these horses want to lay down, they're going to lay down. It doesn't matter if they're tied or not. And I've seen more horses get themselves hurt when we have their head tied and they try to go down and they can't, and then they get themselves into a compromised position. So
yeah, absolutely. If I'm picking up a horse and it's already actively been throwing itself on the ground or slamming itself against its stall walls, I'm going to potentially not even put him in the slants, just give him
room,
essentially open stall in the trailer, and not tie him, because that's going to be my safest bet.
Yeah.
I mean, even if we get him to the clinic and heaven forbid have to cut him out of the trailer, I'd much rather have that than have his head tied up through the window and him have hurt himself going down. Like, it just isn't worth it.
I will, like, too, if we've got one of these colics that's just hurling itself on the ground, I will sedate them, once we're on the trailer or before we get on the trailer, just to try to kind of keep them calm. Usually I do kind of a combination of an IV and an IM, just so that it lasts for long. Luckily where we are with most of our colics, when we're referring them somewhere, they're maybe hauling an hour, maybe a little bit longer, kind of depending on where they are in our zones. So we don't have to worry about that. But, if you're out in, one of these like super rural areas and you got to go somewhere, you might be looking at, 2-3+ hours to get to where you need to go. And so, like, if you are hauling one of these guys, check on them, just be careful, like, get to where you need to be, but, like, just watch them and be in communication with, the vet that sent you and where you're going. So
yeah, and again, this is where hauler experience comes in. I mean, if I'm hauling a colic, I'm going to think ahead differently than I would a giant laceration that's like toe touching or non-weight bearing on a leg. You think about it differently going into turns or acceleration. Like, it's a whole different thought process, and something that you have to be prepared for. It's not like loading a bunch of cows on a trailer and getting on down the road at all.
So we talked about colic, injured legs. The rule of thumb is you want to put the injured leg facing the back of the trailer. So if they say they were worried about a front leg and they're not putting any weight on that front leg, you want their head to be like facing backwards, like facing the back of the trailer, if that makes sense. Because the whole point is that so when you're stopping and you're bracing, they're not putting excess weight on that front leg. They're kind of rocking back onto the leg that's not hurt, and then vice versa. If it's a back leg, you want them to haul kind of facing forward.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter how smooth you drive. It is a roller coaster back there. It
is, yes.
Like, if your friend has a trailer, you should go stand in the back while they drive around, because it takes a lot of work. I mean, like we said, it uses a bunch of muscles, but especially if they're injured, you don't want to do anything that's going to potentially make that worse because of them having to brace or slam it against the wall or, yeah.
Right. And if we are worried about a leg, if say it's broken or we've got a really bad tendon injury or something that's, laceration, we are going to try to give them support before we go in. So we're going to give them some NSAIDs, try to keep them comfortable. If it's something that we're not worried about, like breaking, I might block that limb so that they do feel a little bit more comfortable putting weight on it, so that they can give themselves a little more support. Lots of bandaging. We'll do splints if we're worried about stability on it. Braces, they have some things for like on the racetracks and stuff. But yeah, again, that's where it comes into talk to your vet, talk to your hauler, let them know what's going on so that, we can be safe. Again, like you said, you might try to take a route that doesn't have as many turns so that, they're not having to brace themselves as much.
Yeah, absolutely. I've gone the long way before because it was a straighter shot. And less curves, and that horse had a giant laceration in its stifle. So just things to consider. It's very much a group effort between owner, vet, and hauler. A lot of times I have doctors call me that I'm going to pick up one of their patients, and they give me the rundown of like what meds he's had and what they recommend from a comfort standpoint. So very much working together on this.
Yes, absolutely. So, and again, if you have questions about this, we're always going to say, it's kind of a, what's the best case for this horse? We don't want to haul horses that are hurting, if we don't have to. But if we need to get them somewhere, say, they've got a really severe laceration and we need to get them into a clinic so that we can fix it, or we can do some more imaging, or, lay them down to flush it and stuff, we're going to make the right choice to do it. But if we don't have to, we're say, hey, maybe we can do what we need to on the farm so that we can avoid having to do this. So, but,
Yeah.
Things happen and we got to do what we need to do. So,
Yeah, for sure. I'd say the majority of the ERs that I haul are typically colics. They're needing to come in for fluids or potentially surgery. So, you just treat that different than you treat any other kind of ER.
Again, safety's key. So.
Yeah.
All right. So I think kind of our final thing is like, prepping for trailering. So, what are some things we can do, before we trailer to make the experience a little better? What are some things we can do during the ride and, kind of afterwards to help our horses recover and, all of that. So, I'd say one of the things we kind of already talked about was, feed intake and water intake during the trailer ride. They're usually less likely to eat and drink when they're moving, especially if they're not comfortable with traveling, if they're not one of these seasoned travelers. I try to tell people don't bulk feed them before they go. Because that's, if you're just putting too much food in their stomach before they go on a big ride, you could probably say the same for yourself. You're not going to be super comfortable after you've just had a big meal and now you're going to go on a car ride.
And not drink.
And you're not going to
potentially
drink.
Colic.
Right. So, if we're going to do feed, I try to keep things as, consistent as possible leading up to it. But, make them kind of a super wet meal the night before you haul. Add a bunch of water to their grain, maybe make them a nice little mash with some hay cubes or pellets or something. Give them a fun water, give them some electrolytes in there to try to get them to drink. You can make sweet tea with a little bit of grain in there. Just try to get their hydration as much as possible. I've had a few horses that we know are problem children, and we know they're going to be a problem. And those horses, we have tubed them with water beforehand, or even run IV fluids to them before they haul, just because we know that they are problem children and they don't drink and they tend to colic and have bad experiences with things. So we've done that. I don't recommend that for everybody. I don't think that's necessary for the majority of the population of horses. This is just a very specific breed of problem child. So
I'd say more often than that, we encounter they have a history of not doing well with stress and having ulcers.
Yes.
So more often we recommend the UlcerGuard GastroGuard.
Yeah, GastroGuard, starting about 2-3 days before they go, start them on a quarter or a half tube of GastroGuard a day leading up to it. When you're traveling, you can put them on a full tube and then leave them on the GastroGuard for a couple days, once you get to your destination. So,
yeah, they're going to have more than likely less forage intake throughout that trip, so that's going to help. Speaking of forage, a way that I can get more hydration in them is sometimes I'll soak their hay in a netted slow feed bag, and I'll hang that, and the water's just going to run out the door basically. But that way, if they are eating, at least they're also getting some water, because they're very unlikely to drink on the trailer. And it doesn't matter what you do. I recommend electrolytes the night before as well. it's just stressful, and they aren't thirsty, and the water might taste weird even if you bring it from home. I do that. It's just weird. And I am not one to hang buckets in the trailer because I feel like that's potentially causing more of a risk than them drinking it. Is it going to spill, or are they going to lose their balance and fall into it? Now you've got a piece of a bucket sticking in a chest. Like, I mean, I just really try to be cautious with that because horses do that stuff. I have not seen it, but I'm just like picturing it in my head, and I'm not real thrilled about potentially dealing with that.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
I just kind of have to prep for worst case, and horses are
going to do it
sometimes.
If they have an opportunity to hurt themselves on something, they're going to do it. So yeah, I'm sure it's happened to somebody. So
absolutely.
Yeah. But how often do you usually stop when you're on a long haul?
So, I mean, like we said, long haul, we're talking 8+ hours. I normally stop and offer water at every time I fill up. So that ends up being about 4 hours. I let off the trailer and at least like let them walk around, graze, take a second to drink, out in open air, not in the trailer, about every 6. I mean, that said, if the horse is doing fine and we're 30 minutes from the place and it's 6 hours, like, we're just going to get there. The best way to mitigate their stress is to get where you're going and get them off. So, like, it's just something that you weigh as a factor. I'd rather get there than stop every 1 hour and check them. Like, that's just as more stressful. They just want to get there. So, yeah, I mean, my personal rule of thumb is water every 3 to 4 and let off every 6. That just makes the most sense for most of the trips that I do. That said, if I've got, for instance, a weanling that's loose in the trailer and it literally got weaned because we pulled it from its mom to put it on the trailer, I'm not going to let that horse off.
Yeah.
Like, the likelihood that I get her back on there is really low. Or if you pick up, like, let's say a sale barn horse or like a BLM donkey, like, they're going to be fine. The biggest,
you just want to get them
the
there.
most important thing is that you get them there, not that you're on the side of I-10 and you've got a loose donkey that won't reload. Like, yeah, nobody wants a pet donkey at the TA. So we just try to get there and trust your shipper's discretion. Again, I send pictures and updates at the stop, so let them know if they did drink, etc. Communication is everything in this, especially when the owners, aren't following you or aren't there, aren't in the truck with you. It's stressful on them too, so it needs to be a big peace of mind thing to keep them updated.
Absolutely. One of the things we kind of talked about too is, muscle soreness beforehand and on the ride and everything. Sometimes we will kind of pre-med these guys with some Banamine or some Bute before they go. If they're traveling for multiple days, we'll make sure that we're staying on top of that, just to try to keep them comfortable, especially some of these old guys if they've got arthritis and if they're already on a daily arthritis medication, maybe, making sure we're including that, making sure we're, just staying on top of things, because again, they will be pretty sore. My kind of rule of thumb that I learned growing up was for every 12 hours of trailer, you give them 1 day of rest when you get to your final destination. So if you've been traveling for 3 days, you need to give them 3 days off of travel. So just don't ride them, don't do anything with them. Just let them eat, let them drink, let them turn out, be a horse for a little bit before you try to do something with them.
Yeah, for sure. And I know at these health certificate appointments, that's something a lot of times too y'all talk about with the owners is like, oh, they're on Equiox, they have a history of OA, they're 25 years old and they're hauling to their new farm 3 hours away. Like, how are you going to manage that? That's huge for your, as an owner and your vet to figure out the best plan for your horse.
Yeah, so talk to your vet ahead of time. Let them know where you're going, what the plan is. And, planning like stops and stuff too. If you've got some of these old guys and they're having a hard time standing, we might stop more. Or, we might break the trip up into a couple days so that they have a little bit longer of a rest period. So,
right.
And kind of finding, I guess when you're on the trip too, where do you tend to stop? Like, if you have to overnight, like...
So there's a website called horsemotels.com, I think. I found some great places through that. I've kind of got like my go-to places now in like Texas, Louisiana, Ohio, like just because I do those routes all the time. And, you know, you build relationships with these people and they're fantastic, and they monitor the water for you so that you can sleep and clean your stall and like have fresh shavings or have a like grass turnout run, something like that. So there's a lot of great places from that. I've stopped at like equestrian centers with universities before. A lot of times they'll let you overnight and give you a stall, and then there's like trailer hookups and stuff as well. And then I've stopped when I'm in the middle of nowhere. I'll stop at like rodeo grounds because I can at least turn them out, like back where they put the buck and stock in like those little pens, and then I can park there and sleep and have water. And a lot of times those places are unlocked, and you can just pull in, and especially if it's, I mean, I think I did it in like middle of nowhere, Kansas or something one time, and yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'm learning so much today. So
there's all kinds of places you can make it work. I have done parking lots before when there were no other option and the horse sleeps on the trailer. But that's extenuating circumstances, and nobody really sleeps at that point or gets to relax. But
you got to do what you got to do. So
yeah. But there's lots of options. Talk to other haulers in your area. Talk to trainers that always do that route. I mean, yeah, there's plenty of resources. There's Facebook groups. Just do some research.
I think everybody's worst nightmare is, you know, injuries on the trailer. You know, I've seen them bonk their head on the top of the roof, slice their leg on something, slice their face open. You know, they get into a scuffle in between the slats, between multiple horses. You know, how do you deal with that?
I mean, aside from everything you do prior, trying to reduce the chance of that happening, horses are horses. Knowing that as an owner, just be patient, I guess, or like try to be understanding that like there's only so much your shipper can do from their truck, whether they have cameras in the back or not. I mean, you can't stop a horse from kicking via camera. Or even if you're back there, like there's only so much you can do. What's important is that your shipper knows what to do should that stuff happen. So again, know where your vets are, have some on call, that you know you can FaceTime even and be like, hey, what do I need to do about this? From a liability standpoint, like you always need to do everything from veterinary direction and with the owner consent. So I'm not going to place a bandage. I'm not going to give bute. I'm not going to do anything that could potentially put me at risk or the horse at risk. I don't know their history. Again, this is why you talk to your whole care team prior to hauling. But most shippers, if they're experienced and know horses, they're going to have like an ER kit essentially on hand. But they aren't just going to like willy-nilly doctor your stuff, or they shouldn't. They should do it all under veterinary direction and again with owner consent.
Right.
That said, they have to actually communicate the injury with the owner in order to get consent. So if your horse steps off the trailer and there's a gash that's been treated but you never knew about it, you have a problem. So as a shipper, or even if you're just hauling like your friend's horse down to the show or whatever, something happens, just call them, send them a picture, say, look, this is the deal. How would you like me to proceed? There's this clinic this far away. Like, you let me know how you want to go about it and make a plan.
I've had people call me that they're just passing through and their horse does something dumb on a trailer, and they just were like, hey, just roll on in here and we'll take a look at it. And, you know, if we need to suture them up, we do it. If, you know, we need to run some fluids on something, we'll do it. Like, I mean, it happens. They're horses. Like, and, you know, we, again, like you said, we do what we can to mitigate that, but things are going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, we joke about bubble wrapping them, but you can't.
They'd probably find a way around that too. So.
100%. They'd asphyxiate or something on the bubble wrap. No doubt. No doubt. So, yeah, just talk to your vet and your owner, but I can't stress enough, like, know your shipper. There are some sketchy ones out there. There are some that I was supposed to be meeting this shipper to pick up a horse halfway and continue bringing it, And I finally got to meet them a week later than we were supposed to. And the owner at this point thought the horse had been stolen. Like, there was zero communication.
Oh, God.
Like, you do not want that stress in your life. Know your shipper. Do not go for the cheapest rate.
Yeah. And
Ask for recommendations, like something.
Yeah. Just because your next door neighbor has a trailer doesn't mean that that's the person you need hauling your horse. You know,
Yeah.
especially if it's going to be a long distance.
And those
thing.
trailers need maintenance.
Yes.
Like, I'll be honest, my biggest fear is a horse falling through the trailer floor, and I've been very fortunate that doesn't happen. But part of that is you get maintenance done by reputable companies that know trailers. I mean, these aluminum floors can be scary. The wooden floors can be scary. Like, you got to have your maintenance done.
Again, I've seen some trailers roll up into this clinic and
On, like, 2 wheels.
I'm like, what in the world? Like, how is that street
And
legal?
those horses never get hurt.
No, and you just see these horses just holding on for dear life in there, and I'm like, oh, girl.
It's crazy. But, I mean,
yeah.
you can have the most temperature-controlled padded trailer out there, and that horse is going to, like, bust its eye open.
Yeah, it's,
I mean, yeah,
Man, that's-
just know what to do in the event that things happen.
yeah. You know, I think if we can summarize this podcast, it's, you know, if you're going to haul your horse, you know, have a plan. It's not just a quick one and done thing. You know, you can vet your drivers, vet your haulers. You know,
If they aren't okay with that, also a red flag.
yeah, if they're gonna give you trouble about it, yeah, know that ahead of time. Again, you get what you pay for. Have a game plan. Know where you're going. Know where you need to stop. Talk to your veterinarians beforehand. You know what we can do to make your horse comfortable and make this experience the best for them. Have an emergency plan in the meantime.
Always.
That's it. All
So,
right.
yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining us on this side of the camera. So
Yeah, it's been fun. Very different.
very different. Will you come back, or do you enjoy the back of the
If there's
camera?
something else for me to talk about, sure. Keep sending your suggestions.
Yes, this was fun. Thank you to everybody who suggested this. This was a little different, but we were like,
Yeah.
oh, this is they're like, you can't talk about this for 45 minutes. I said, bet.
Oh,
Yes,
we could totally go longer.
I can talk about anything for 45
We didn't even get
minutes,
into,
so-
like, cameras in the back and dash cams and, I mean, shoot, there's so much more.
automatic waterers and
Yeah.
feeders and things. Like, there's some real fancy.
Or hauling stuff that's, like, infectious. Oh, that's a whole other deal.
Disinfecting your trailer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. That's
Okay, maybe we'll do a round 2.
Yeah. Again.
Send us your questions.
Thanks, you guys. Bye.
Bye.